Hello, and welcome to the Dance Physio Podcast, a podcast designed to explore ideas and foster discussion around dancer health and wellness. We're here to challenge the status quo, bridge the gap between dance science and the studio, and help change the landscape of the dance industry for the better. I'm your host, Erika Mayall, a dancer turned physiotherapist who is deeply passionate about leaving the dance world better than I found it. I'm so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Dance Physio Podcast. I am your host, Erika Mayall. And today is a very exciting podcast milestone. Today is the 100th episode of the Dance Physio Podcast. So when I knew this milestone was approaching, I started to think about how did I want to mark the milestone or what were we going to do? And I kind of started to put some feelers out to other friends of mine who have podcasts and things like that. And the more I thought about it, it really came down to me wanting to try and figure out a way to celebrate the community that has been created by this podcast. And that largely comes down to you, the listeners, because it really is you who create this community. I think I've talked about it before a little bit on the podcast, but podcasting is a little bit of a strange endeavor in that it is very one way a lot of the time. So I'm recording these episodes sitting on the floor in my son's bedroom, as I usually do to record them, and putting this out into the ether or whatever you want to call it. And I never necessarily know how it's going to land or who is listening to it or what is being done with the information or any of those things unless I get some sort of interaction from you, the listeners. And you guys have been amazing in terms of engaging with the podcast episodes, sending me messages with things that resonate, asking questions, podcast topic suggestions, all of the things. I also randomly will run into people out in the wild when I'm out with my family or by myself, and people will kind of come up, usually very tentatively, and sort of say, "Are you Erika from the Dance Physio Podcast?" And I love it when I get to actually meet people in real life, because like I said, it's kind of this weird one-way street where mostly I feel like I'm just talking to myself until situations like that happen. I remember once, this was a while ago, I was in a suburb kind of near where I live, but not that close, like maybe 30 minutes away from where I live, and was walking through a little strip mall area, and somebody rolled down their car window and just yelled out, "I love your podcast," and then sort of kept driving by. And things like that just like really warm my heart, because it is really nice to know that people are listening and people appreciate the information. And that's really the reason why I keep going. So I wanted to try and figure out a way to celebrate you guys. And as I started to think about it more, I started to reach out and connect with some of my contacts within the dance world and other friends and supporters and things. And a lot of people offered up kind of prizes or giveaways, if you will. And so that's what we're going to do today. We are going to do a kind of podcast celebration of 100 episodes, but really celebrating and really appreciating you, the listeners, because I would not be here without you. So what I want to do is I want to recap the top 5 episodes from the last 100, just because I found it really interesting to go back when I was, again, trying to think about, like, how do we mark this milestone? I started to look at some of the stats. And so I'm going to go through and share the top 5 episodes with you guys. And then also, like I said, I have a lot of giveaways. So definitely listen through to the end. I am going to, at the very end, tell you how to enter the giveaways, but I will be introducing what the prizes are throughout the episode as well. And like I said, we have some really amazing things. So you definitely want to stay tuned. Looking at the top 5 episodes, it's, again, podcasting is kind of this weird anomaly or thing where we don't actually get a ton of information or statistics about who is listening or how people are interacting with the podcast. So it's a little bit different than social media, because social media, you get, you can see how many people like a post. You can see people who comment on it. You can see if people have shared a post. You also just get numbers, like they call them reach, but you can kind of see how many people have like seen the post, even if they haven't stopped to like it. And so you get a little bit of a better sense of how people are interacting with content on a social media platform. With podcasting, the only statistic that we get is how many people download an episode. And we know that a lot of people don't actually download episodes when they're listening to a podcast. A lot of people just go into a podcast streaming platform, whether that be Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcast, and just hit play. And so you're streaming it while you're listening to it, so you don't actually download it. And if you're not downloading it, we don't get that information. So also, little plug to download podcast episodes. But anyway, that's totally beside the point. I don't really care if people download them or not, as long as they're listening. But we don't actually get true listenership data that is not based on downloads. So, like I said, these are the top 5 episodes based on download statistics, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the top 5 listened to episodes. I just don't have that information because, again, we don't get a ton of information. We get a lot of information about, the listeners in terms of like where they are geographically, or whether they're listening on an Apple phone or an Android or a desktop computer, or like things like that, which I find interesting that they like give us that type of breakdown. But we don't get, like I said, information about people who are listening unless they are downloading it, which is why people push subscribing to podcasts so much, because if you're subscribed to a podcast, that sort of by default will download the episodes as they're released, as long as you're still listening to them. So anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted to give you some information about how we are coming to these top 5 episodes. So episode number 1, or the most downloaded episode of this podcast over the past 100 episodes, was episode number 11, Flexibility for Dancers Part 1. And this was the flexibility versus mobility episode. I actually am going to include all of the flexibility for dancers episodes in this, because they actually, 3 out of the top 5 episodes were flexibility episodes. So we're going to just kind of like clump those 3 all together. So episodes 11, 12, 13, and 14 were a 4-part series on flexibility for dancers. And I am not at all surprised that those are 3 of the top 5 downloaded episodes of all time, because every time dancers come through the clinic, when they're coming in the door, most dancers have goals and aspirations of improving or increasing their flexibility. It is the number one thing that I hear with dancers in terms of when they have dance-specific goals, that is what they are working on. So it does not surprise me. The thing that I love about the fact that these are the most downloaded episodes is that in these episodes, we really dive into the difference between flexibility versus mobility, or one of the episodes is all about active mobility. And one of them is about, safe stretching and the sort of risks involved with overstretching and things like that. And so the fact that dancers are motivated to increase their flexibility, but clearly interested in learning about a safer or more effective way to do it makes me so happy. This is also where the Flexibility Foundations program came from in terms of developing that teacher program, because there's obviously a demand for dancers and dance teachers to have better ways of teaching flexibility that are safer and that are effective, but protect our dancers' bodies so we're not resorting to unsafe stretching practices. So when I actually went back and looked at the stats and saw how many of the flexibility episodes were in those top ones, I was so happy that this, is landing with people, and that there seems to be a bit of a cultural shift in terms of people's perceptions or understanding of what it takes to achieve increased flexibility, but in a safe and sustainable way. So, top episodes, all about flexibility. I will also link all of these episodes in the show notes. So if you're like, oh, I haven't listened to those ones, I'm a newer listener to the podcast or whatever, go back, listen to those ones. I will put all of this information in the show notes. So that brings us to our first giveaway. So I'm just going to introduce our kind of sponsors and prizes as we go through. So after each episode. So the first one I want to introduce you to is the Dance Leadership Institute. And the Dance Leadership Institute offers a range of programs designed to enhance your skills and empower you to lead effectively. Whether you wish to boost your professional acumen, elevate your professional profile, or aspire to become an in-demand dance adjudicator, their comprehensive offerings are tailored by dance industry professionals to meet you wherever you are on your dance journey. So they are a fabulous organization. They're based locally in Vancouver. So I am lucky enough to know these people. And they offer programs, and a lot of their programs are online. So they have kindly donated a full scholarship to their Leadership in Dance online certification. So this is a hands-on course that fosters growth through engaging group discussions, interactive breakout sessions, reflective journaling, and practical exercises, all within a safe and supportive environment. Together, you'll explore pivotal questions that uncover and nurture each individual's unique leadership style and strengths, empowering participants to align their personal qualities with effective practices in the dance studio. So this is such a fabulous opportunity for really anyone within the dance industry, but especially I think if you are a, early career teacher or kind of I would say early career dance teacher. I think doing some leadership training, specifically to really hone in on what your unique leadership skills are is so, so, so valuable. So our friends at the Dance Leadership Institute have donated a full scholarship, and this is an online course. So you can participate in this course from anywhere in the world, and they've got a bunch of dates coming up and will continue to have dates coming up. So that is our first prize for our giveaway. Like I said, stay tuned to the end of the episode, and I will tell you how to enter. All right, episode number 2 in terms of our downloaded or top 5 episodes. It was actually the very, very first episode of the podcast, which was entitled My Journey as a Dance Physiotherapist. And when I looked at this, was a little bit surprised because not that I don't think it's an interesting episode, but there's so many episodes that have so much information about different injuries and dance science topics, and people can, learn and dig into a lot of those episodes. And this one I kind of felt was a bit fluffy in the sense that I was just kind of outlining how I got to where I am. But then I've realized that a lot of the people who listen to the podcast are, either dancers who are thinking about transitioning to a career potentially in physiotherapy, or early career healthcare providers who are interested in trying to figure out how exactly to work with dancers and all of those types of things. So reflecting back on that, I guess I am not that surprised about it, but I do find it really interesting that episode number 1 is the number 2 most downloaded episode. And so this really was just kind of a little bit of a biography episode. It outlines kind of my dance journey, starting out as a young kid dancing, and then my kind of path into my undergraduate degree, and then into my master's degree, and then how I've kind of evolved that over the years to work specifically with dancers and to focus my practice on that. So again, if you haven't listened to that episode and you just want to know a little bit more about me personally, feel free to go back and have a listen. But like I said, I was a bit surprised because it doesn't feel like it's the most substantive episode in terms of actual concrete, educational value or things like that. So along with that, giveaway number 2, I thought, well, how about I personally also add something to this giveaway? And so many of you will know, or hopefully you do know, I have a clinic called Allegro Performance and Wellness. We are a boutique physiotherapy clinic located in Vancouver, Canada, but we also do online consultations with dancers from all over the world. And so I will be giving away a 1-hour online consultation. This is awesome for any dancer who just has goals that they want to work on, specific things, whether it's flexibility, whether it's strength, whether they have, sort of injury things that they want to troubleshoot or talk through. But also, if you are a dance educator and you have questions about how to implement dancer health and wellness into your teaching, or how to manage injuries within your student population, or just how to take care of your own body as a dance educator, any of the above, you can use this free online consult for that as well. So giveaway number 2 is a 1-hour free online consult with myself. All right, moving on. Episode number 3, or the third top downloaded episode, was actually episode number 7, which was dance conditioning, cross-training versus supplemental training. And this was such a great episode because I really kind of dove into what the difference between cross-training and supplemental training is, and what the benefits are, and why we might choose one versus the other when we're thinking about how do we complement a dancer's dance training program. Because most people in the dance world are quite aware now of the need to have a little bit of either cross-training or strength and conditioning and things like that embedded into their dance training programs. It is no longer sufficient to just go to dance class and think that we can meet the physical demands that are required. And so in this episode, we really broke down the difference between cross-training and supplemental training. And although this episode was quite a while ago, like this was released almost 2 years ago, I still very vividly remember a lot of the conversations that I had where people kind of had a lot of aha moments of being like, oh, I really thought that I was doing a lot of cross training, but actually what I was doing was more supplementary training, or vice versa. And so this was an episode where I actually did have a lot of feedback and conversations and people wanting to clarify things, which was really interesting because I think it was probably the first episode where I started to see a lot of that. The first few episodes that released to the podcast were, a little bit more one way, just me, again, putting content out into the universe and seeing what would happen. And this, I really had a lot of engagement, which was interesting that, again, it became apparent that this was something that the dance world really needed a little bit more definition or a little bit more context for, because a lot of people reached out saying, oh, I really thought we had like a great cross-training program at our studio, but when I actually think about it or like look at it and break it down, it really is more of a supplementary training program. And it turns out our dancers maybe aren't doing as much cross-training as we thought they were doing. So I thought that was really interesting. Like I said, episode 7, dance conditioning, was the third most downloaded episode of all time. And to go along with that, our giveaway comes from our friends at Pivot Dancer. So if you are not familiar with Pivot Dancer, you should be. But Pivot Dancer is an online platform that is designed specifically for dancers by dance medicine experts. Pivot Dancer is the resource dancers can turn to when they have questions about how to stay healthy, avoid injuries, and perform at their best. Pivot Dancer combines sport and dance medicine clinicians from Pivot Sport Medicine with dance scientists and dance experts from around the world to create the trusted platform of virtual appointments, live and recorded classes, and an on-demand video library of therapeutic exercises and education for dancers to use in any location and any time zone. So our friends at Pivot Dancer have donated 1 free month on the Pivot Dancer platform to one lucky podcast listener. And the Pivot Dancer platform, they have developed their own app that goes with it, and it is such a great resource. So if you are looking for cross-training programs or classes or therapeutic exercises because you know that you need to work on some specific parameter of your dancing or whatever, it is such a great online platform and online resource. And they have created a really fantastic community of the people who are part of their platform and part of their program. So we are very, very grateful to our friends at Pivot Dancer for donating a free month on the Pivot Dancer platform to a lucky podcast listener. All right, 4th most downloaded podcast episode so far is The Truth About Turnout. And this one did not, again, surprise me at all, because probably second to flexibility with dancers coming into the clinic in terms of goals of what dancers want to work on, I feel like right behind flexibility is often turnout. And there's a lot of misconceptions about turnout within the dance world in terms of where it comes from, how we access it, what the ideals are, should everybody be trying to achieve perfect turnout, all of these sorts of things. So it did not surprise me at all that one of the top 5 episodes was the Truth About Turnout episode. So in this episode, we dive into, well, the truth about turnout and whether it is possible for people to achieve 180 degrees, but really talk about the biomechanics of turnout, the anatomy of the hip joint, how we can access and utilize our turnout, and all sorts of things like that. So, like I said, not at all surprised that this was among one of the top downloaded episodes. And again, if you haven't listened to it, it is a great one just to get a really good foundation of understanding where turnout comes from and how to utilize it and what best practices are for turnout. All right, on to giveaway number 4 comes from our friend Rosina Andrews, who has actually been a guest on the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that podcast episode, I don't actually have the episode number off the top of my head, but it was not that long ago. I'm going to say it was in the spring sometime. So anyway, I will look that up and add that to the show notes as well. But Rosina was a guest on the podcast, and she has kindly contributed to our giveaway as well. So Rosina is a pioneer in technical and performance development, and she's transformed the way dancers master turns, leaps, and overall artistry through her #DanceSmarter approach. So she has a background in both professional performance and education, and she's worked with dancers and studios worldwide, sharing her expertise through workshops, intensives, and her best-selling books, Pirouette Surgery and Leap Surgery. So she has really kindly donated an ebook copy of Pirouette Surgery, and it has an accompanying teacher kit as well. So if we have a teacher who is the winner of this prize, there is an accompanying teacher kit. But Pirouette Surgery is designed for dance teachers and also dedicated dancers. So if you're a dancer and you're just looking to improve your pirouettes, this is a great resource, and it delves into the biomechanics and artistry of turning and has a really comprehensive approach to teaching and perfecting this kind of fundamental skill. So I have a physical copy of this book, and it is fabulous. It's a really great resource for people who are wanting to learn more about like the biomechanics of pirouettes and turning and things like that. But she's kindly donated an ebook copy so that, again, no matter where you are in the world, you will have access to that. So thank you so much, Rosina, for that. All right. Moving on to the 5th and final podcast episode of our top 5 episodes out of our first 100. Drum roll, da-da-da-da-da. It is episode 55, Strength Training for Dancers. Again, not super surprised that this was among the top most popular. And I do feel like this is really a reflection of how far we have come in the dance world in the last, decade or more, let's say. So it made me really happy to see that along with the cross training and supplementary training, people are really interested in strength training for dancers, because certainly when I was growing up dancing, that was not something that was the norm. And if anything, it was kind of like frowned upon, because there was this idea that dancers would get bulky or dancers were going to develop the wrong muscles and all of, these myths that we have since busted, or hopefully have busted. So the fact that people are invested in and wanting to learn more about and are really fairly accepting of strength training for dancers made me really happy to see this episode among the top 5 most downloaded episodes. I do think we have work to do when it comes to strength training for dancers, because although there is much more acceptance of the importance of strength training or the need for strength training, I still think the dance world doesn't always get it right. There's still a lot of kind of preconceived notions of what strength training actually looks like. And when we look at strength training, a lot of times stuff that dancers are doing might only be body weight strength training or using, minimal resistance or no resistance for exercises. And so I still think there's a lot of room for improvement to see, even better implementation of strength training within the dance world. But the fact that we've even changed some of the perceptions and acceptance around it, I think is a huge, huge win. So it made me really happy. And, just as like a little bit of an aside, I posted something on social media recently, or reposted, I should say. But if you haven't seen it, School of American Ballet just opened a new, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it is like a health and wellness suite, basically, that is part of their facilities. And it includes like student lounges. It looks absolutely gorgeous from the photos and stuff that I've seen, but it includes a Pilates studio, but it also includes a full strength and conditioning room as well that has like proper, barbells and weight plates and weights and kettlebells and all of that type of equipment. And so we are seeing this change within the dance world and starting to see that even, really iconic institutions like School of American Ballet are really accepting and embracing the need for strength training with dancers. So I was very, very happy to see that this podcast episode was among the top 5. All right, on to our last giveaway. And this one comes from the Library Aesthetic. And I think you have probably heard me talk about the Library Aesthetic before because, full disclosure, I am a contributor to their platform. But the Library Aesthetic Dance Media is a unique content platform dedicated to dancer well-being, inspiration, fitness, and health. It's a library that is developed on the premise of we're stronger together. The platform brings knowledge of the world's leading health practitioners, organizations, syllabus, brands, and coaches across diverse dance-related fields to be a one-stop platform for dancers, teachers, and all of those passionate about dance. So the really cool thing about the Library Aesthetic is how many contributors there are, and from all over the world. And so there are other healthcare professionals, so other physical therapists, there's strength and conditioning coaches, there are dietitians and nutritionists, there's psychologists, there's all sorts of people. But there's also a lot of people contributing to the platform who are contributing to other facets of dance as well. So there's a lot of information on like artistry in dance. There's also tons of different ways of consuming the content within it. So there is video content, but there's also audio content, so podcasts and things like that. There's written content if you like to consume written content more so than video content. So it is such a fabulous resource because it's really just drawing together all of these experts from all over the world and putting it all in one place on one platform. So literally anything that you are looking for when it comes to dance-related content is going to be available on the Library Aesthetic. So our friends at the Library Aesthetic have really, really, really generously actually donated 3 prizes to the giveaway. We have 2 individual annual subscriptions. So that's a year-long subscription to the platform for 2 different individuals. And then they have also donated an annual studio subscription. And so the studio subscription is amazing because then all of the people affiliated with that studio, so teachers, directors, all of that, all have access to the information. So instead of each person signing up to the platform separately, you can share this information among your studio setting. So, like I said, 3 different prizes, 2 individual, 1 studio subscription. And if you are like a dancer or a dance parent and you win the studio subscription, you can absolutely gift that or like kind of pass that along to your studio and have them set up the subscription, because everybody within the studio community will then have access to that information. So thank you so much to our friends at the Library Aesthetic. And I will just sort of like put a little disclaimer in here just because I want to be really transparent. And like I said, I am a content contributor to this platform, but there's no monetary exchange. So this is me just contributing information to the platform at this point in time. So just in case people are like kind of confused about how this is working or what have you, I'm not getting anything in exchange for contributing content other than wanting to, be a part of sharing and spreading all of this dancer health and wellness information. So if you have made it this far, thank you so much. I know all of you guys are now like, how do we enter all these contests? We have such great prizes and such good giveaways. So there are a few different ways that you can enter. Number 1, you can send me an email at hello@allegroperformance.com. My email's in the show notes too. So if you're listening to this, just go click on the email in the show notes. It's easier, but it's hello@allegroperformance.com, and tell me what your favorite podcast episode has been over the past 100 episodes. So pick your favorite for whatever reason. You can tell me the reason if you want. You don't have to, but just let me know what your favorite podcast episode has been. And that is worth 1 entry into the prize draw. So send me an email for 1 entry. Other options to enter. You can reshare any social media post specifically about the podcast or tagging. Well, the podcast doesn't have its own tags. So you have to tag me, but sharing a social media post. So most of them are those audiograms that I post if you follow me on social media, like on Instagram or anything. Pick one of them. And again, it can be your favorite or whatever. If you reshare that on social media, but you have to tag me. I won't know you've reshared it if you haven't tagged me. So tag me at Dance Physio Erika, resharing a post promoting the podcast. That is worth 2 entries into the draw. And then finally, third way that you can enter is if you leave a review of the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. So it could be Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you like to listen to your podcast. Leave me a review and then take a screenshot of that review and send it to me. You can email me or DM me or whatever, but just a screenshot of the review, leave a review. If you've already left a review, just go back and find it and take a screenshot of it. That's totally fine. You don't need to leave another one. Leave a review of the podcast and then send me proof in the form of a screenshot. And that is worth 5 entries. So 3 different options. Email me your favorite podcast episode, reshare on social media, or leave a review of the podcast. You can absolutely do all of these and stack your entries. So if you do all of these things, it would be worth 8 entries total. So just throwing that out there. If you want to do more than one, feel free. Now, I know that not everybody listens to the podcast episode the day it drops. So this podcast is coming out on September 23rd. I know not everybody listens to it on day 1. So you have until the end of day on September 30th to get your entries in. And I will be doing the prize draws on October 1st. And I'll probably do them on my social media. So do it through like Instagram stories or whatever. So send me your entries before the end of day on September 30th. All right. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much, not just for listening today, but for listening and supporting the podcast over the past 100 episodes. Like I said, when I thought about how I wanted to mark this occasion and sort of celebrate this milestone, the only thing I could really think about was some way of trying to express my gratitude to all of you who have made this a really, really successful podcast. So I really appreciate your support, not just today, but every day. And thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.